Unit 6. Risk. Track 11.
How can companies begin to manage risk?
Well, the good news is that risk management is actually applied common sense. The other good news is that there are plenty of guides out there to help organisations focus on the way they manage risk. Now, one such guide is a new standard available from the International Standards Organisation, ISO 31000. In addition, my own organisation, the Institute of Risk Management, have published a very simple free guide on how organisations can manage risk. Now, this is freely downloadable from IRM's website in 16 different languages, and it sets out the basics of how to manage risk. There are 5 key steps to the management of risk. The first step, which is most important, is to recognise the strategic objectives for your organisation and the key processes that your organisation uses. Following on from step 1, step 2 then goes on to identify what the risks affecting the organisation might be. Now, the best way to identify risks is to look at them from 2 directions, both top down from a management point of view, but also bottom up from the shop floor. Only that way will one identify the full spectrum of risks affecting an organisation. Only at that stage does one then go on to assess and prioritise risks. Point 3. After identifying risk, the next stage is to assess and prioritise those risks. Now, a useful tool to recording prioritised risks is called a risk register. It's a way of an organisation recording those risks that are most critical to the organisation, and more importantly, what the organisation is doing about those risks, when they're planning to do it if they haven't started yet, and who owns the risk. Point 4, mitigating risk. There are 4 ways of dealing with risk once risk has been identified. Firstly, treating the risk, putting in place some countermeasures in order to deal with that risk. 2 examples could be the installation of a fire protection system in order to prevent a fire, or improve driver training in order to stop accidents on the road. Secondly, terminating a risk. Terminating a risk by stopping the process that leads to the risk. Thirdly, tolerating risk, living with the action that gives rise to the risk. And finally, transferring the risk by means of insurance or other contractual arrangements. Finally, point 5. After identifying strategic objectives, identifying risks, assessing and prioritising risks, and then mitigating those risks, it's important that those actions flow back through to one's strategic objectives again. In life, it's not always possible to deal with every risk, and therefore a systematic analysis of your approach to dealing with risk will re-inform your strategic objectives. It will affect the way that the company thinks about itself.